Welcome to LMPD Partners with You. I'm Lower Merion Commissioner Scott Zelov. I'm chair of the Township's Police Committee. And today we're going to talk about cybercrime and identity theft. I'm joined by our Superintendent of Police, Michael McGrath. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks, Scott.
This is a very big issue. This is an issue that, you know, we're in a booming economy. There's lots of jobs. People are doing well, but this is something that affects people every day. I think that most people either have been the victim of cybercrime and identity theft or know someone who has. And it's enormously frustrating and worse. And people, I think, would love to know more about it. So why don't we start with what is a definition, what is an explanation of cybercrime?
Well, cybercrime is more of a generic term for all crime related to use of computers. It could be through phishing, where over the internet, somebody acquires information from you and takes your identity, utilizes that to open up accounts. It could also be fraud for a company. It could also be, as we're well aware of all the discussions about companies protecting against hacking from, industrial type of fraud. And even in our election systems around the country, concerns about other foreign nations getting into our systems through computers, through the internet. So
broadly speaking, that's cybercrime. So then what is identity theft, otherwise known as ID theft?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a subcategory of cybercrime?
It would be one subcategory, as you just said, of cybercrime. And that is where somebody acquires information, personal information from you, and utilizes that to steal money.
And so ID theft, can you expand on that? What are some of the crimes that would be committed if someone has your identity?
Well, there's account takeovers. If they get enough information, they can get into one of your accounts, particularly credit cards is one of the main ones. Bank accounts are also susceptible. Sometimes they try to do things such as revolving accounts you might have. You pay rent, so you have an account with a landlord. You have other accounts, car payments, anything where you have payments digitally, through use of computers. They'll try to get into that and then siphon money for them that way.
And so how does a criminal or an ID thief, how do they steal or find someone's identity? And it's more than just their name, right? Because they have to have information about them.
They do.
It might be their address, but I guess most importantly is a username and password to access an online account.
Yeah, and sometimes they don't need that. But you've seen, and we put it out frequently through alerts to the community about phishing. What that is somebody calls you up.
By the way, phishing spelled PF.
With a P, yes, exactly right. And that's where they're saying they're a utility company or some other typical type of account most people have, and say they're in either their security department or they're trying to sell you an added feature, and they need information from your account. They're verifying your account. And unfortunately, people sometimes will give up too much information, in particular passwords to an account. So the key there is, one takeaway from this should be, if you're ever solicited over the phone to give up information, personal information, do not provide it. Almost none of these types of entities will ever ask you, if they're legitimate, ask you for that information.
And sometimes the phishing occurs by email.
It can.
Right? So well, I receive an email that says this or that has happened to your account. Please provide us with please sign in so we can resolve the problem. And you can look at the sending address, the sending email address, and it never looks like it should.
Well, if you look at it closely, because they try to replicate it as close as possible to the actual entity that's contacting you. So that what you need to do in that regard is just not click on the icon in an email. If, say, just use Pico, says there's an issue with your account, click here and customer service will assist you. Close that email and either call up Pico or go into your account online yourself where you know you're actually going to the Pico website.
And so that would be a way to make sure, that would be an important step to take so that you're not responding to the email, but contacting whatever company it is.
You're talking to the legitimate people that, and then you're going to find out that they never attempted to contact you. One of the other ones we've seen over the last several years, and be coming up soon, is a lot of fraud is occurring where people are trying to pose as IRS agents. And they'll do it, as you just noted, through emails, through phone calls as well. And the IRS will not ask you for personal information. Also, the other part of that they'll do is they're going to claim that there's actually an arrest warrant for you because you've underpaid taxes or you haven't paid your taxes. They don't have a record of you paying your taxes. And that's to put pressure on the people to think, oh my, the police are going to be knocking on my door any minute if I don't immediately respond to this issue. So the IRS does not do that.
But the IRS isn't going to email you saying, give us your personal information.
They will not.
But the reverse is true. If you then call the IRS at the valid number, they are going to make sure that that you match up to your personal information so they know that they're talking to the right person.
Well, they'll be able to check to see if, for instance, there's any concern, any reason for follow-up between the IRS and an individual taxpayer.
So, Mike, tell us about the law in this regard. Local laws, state laws, federal laws. What are the laws and I guess let's start with the laws and we can talk about enforcement of the laws.
Sure. So about 20 years ago, Congress passed a law at the federal level to help agencies fight this issue related to identity theft, cybercrime in general. We have to keep in mind most of this goes between state lines and is really international crime. The one who's fishing for your information and suggesting they're either a utility company or they're the IRS, they may be sitting in a completely different country. They're not next door. They're not the ones committing theft where they walk into your house and steal your purse, or steal something from you when you're out shopping somewhere. So these are all types of thefts, but we need the resources of the federal government to be able to investigate them. On the local level, every state has laws to address this as well. Basically, whether it's phishing type of scenario or some kind of other computer-related crime, it's a theft. That's the basic. But there are additional statutes in place to address those that are related to crimes using computers or the internet.
But the primary law is federal law, and so so tell us, Mike, I'm a victim, or my neighbor's a victim, or my family member's a victim. What should they do? Who do they contact? And should they contact the Lower Merion Police or their local police?
There's a variety of steps you have to take. First step is to try to avoid being a victim.
Right.
And that's a heightened sense of awareness. I put it on the same plane as what you do every day. You leave your home to go shopping, lock your home up. You park your car at the end of the night on the street or in your driveway, lock your car, take your keys with you. Same thing with all your accounts. Check your account statements monthly. Put alerts on your different credit cards. A lot of people, if you're traveling, and the credit card companies put this out, if you're going to be leaving the country or really going to, your routine's changing, You don't typically travel to the West Coast, but you are. You can alert them to say, yeah, I'm going to be in California, or I'm going to be in Canada or Mexico next week. And he actually even put the dates in, so it won't create a issue with you using your credit somewhere else. So those types of things prevent you being a victim of a crime. But let's say you are a victim of a crime. Yes, you can report it to your local police. A lot of time it's only documentation of the incident because it's hard to determine who is creating or who did the crime. But the other way of reporting is to go online to the Federal Trade Commission, and it's very easy through their website to report the crime. And that's very important because all the different incidents of crime around the country goes to one place where they can collect it all and see if there's any patterns.
So Federal Trade Commission, an agency of the federal government, presumably they have a website that's easy to navigate, and the primary recommendation is for a victim to report any incident that in which they're a victim to the Federal Trade Commission. And should they expect a response?
The response will be right over when they report it through that system.
We received your information.
Correct. You're not going to get a phone call response or somebody assigned, a person assigned to call you back to talk about the incident.
Yes.
It's all done electronically. And we'll put it up for the viewers at home, the contact information. But it is www.consumer.gov/ID theft.
Thank you, Mike. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back. You've been watching LMPD Partners with You. I'm Commissioner Scott Zelov. I'm with Lower Merion Police Superintendent Mike McGrath, and we're talking about ID theft and cybercrime. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome to LMPD Partners with You. I'm Lower Merion Commissioner Scott Zelov, and along with Lower Merion Police Superintendent Mike McGrath, we're talking about ID theft and cybercrime. And we've taken a break and now we're back, and I'm going to talk about myself as a victim of cybercrime. Mike, here's what happened. My bank account was accessed by a ID thief who created a new payee, and at the same time created a payment to that new payee, and it basically would have wiped out the balance in my bank account. My bank called me, and they said, "Is this a valid payment?" And I knew right away it wasn't. I said it wasn't, and they said, "We'll stop it." So I give them great credit because they figured it out right away because it was an outlier. It was a new payee and it was a large amount.
Right.
And then after talking to them to understand what happened and that they stopped it, they said they'd like me to change the account number. So we closed the account and we opened a new account. So I guess that's a typical example of ID theft and what can happen.
That is, a lot of banks, as you just noted, and credit card companies, they have systems in place to look for outliers, unusual activity. All of a sudden a purchase made in a region of the country that you're not typically, you haven't done that in the past, or outside the country. So they contact their customer and want to check to see if, in fact, it was a valid purchase.
And one of the things that I was happy about is that my bank had accurate phone numbers for me. So they have my mobile number so they could call it. And I guess that's something that's important to say.
That's particularly important, particularly in our society. People are so mobile. Give them your cell phone number. That's what you want, because you want to be contacted instantly. You don't want to come home at the end of the day and see it's on voicemail, and then find out if you're calling a bank, hopefully they have later hours for a call center,
Right.
But obviously the banks close usually early or late afternoon, early evening, and you can't get to your bank branch in particular, but perhaps a call center would be available.
So Mike, then I was the victim of a second version of ID theft, and this is with a credit card. So my credit card company, they didn't call, but they texted and emailed, and they said, is this a valid charge? And it was a very small amount. It was $15, but it was in Minnesota. I haven't been to Minnesota in a while, and so I think I texted back or emailed back saying, no, it's not a valid charge. And they then said, okay, we're going to change your credit card number. So it's not closing the credit card, it's just changing the account number. And that's inconvenient.
Sure.
It's work for me. Then they had to send a new credit card, and it wasn't a large amount. It was a very small amount. And what they said was that a ID thief will do small charges, and if they are undetected, then the charges will increase. They'll become large charges.
Yeah, they're trying to see if you're a customer that pays attention to, your statements. And if they get away, as you just noted, with a small charge, they'll up the ante.
So I kept the credit card, but it has a new account number and a new code and a new expiration date. And so I give my credit card company for figuring that out. And so I think the financial companies are, my anecdotal experience is that they have good systems in place.
And we've heard that before as well. It's important, though, too, you being the consumer, the customer, as we talked in the previous segment, to be aware of these issues and also protect yourself. So in your case, you were contacted about activity that looked suspicious. How about if your wallet's stolen, or some other way you've been a victim of a theft, or particularly identity theft? Just not that one account. You should then reach out to all your credit agencies you're involved with and put a fraud alert on each account. You don't necessarily need to change all of your credit cards, but if you do that, then they'll even up the ante as far as making sure you're protected against future attempts at identity theft.
And so how does a consumer go about putting a fraud alert in place?
Well, unfortunately, it is work. As we note, you have to contact each of your credit card companies, banks, any financial entities that you're involved with, and let them know that something happened, you were a victim of a theft, your wallet was stolen, or something along those lines.
So another thing that I learned in my experience was that changing passwords frequently and making them and having different passwords for the various accounts for which you have passwords is very important.
It is. You can't just use your kid's name and your date of birth and use that for 15 different accounts. It's convenient for you as you're checking things on, on a monthly basis, but it's terrific for the thieves out there to get access to multiple accounts.
Right, so if you use a username and password to access your fantasy football team, you don't want to use that same username and password to access your bank account.
Yeah, think about it. Even though they might not have hacked into your accounts, maybe they've hacked into a company's accounts or somebody else you have credit with. And if they get that information, then they can go out and look into if they can access your other accounts.
So people have usernames and passwords on so many different websites, from important ones like your bank account and your financial accounts to fun ones, like your fantasy football team or other things that you enjoy doing. So how do you keep track of your usernames and passwords if you follow the guideline that they should be different for every account for which you have online access?
And again, they need to be complicated. So It is difficult. I'll give you my personal experience. I have 3 pages of passwords and usernames for as you note, all the various accounts you have there. Some you're using on a monthly basis, normal rotating payments you have. Others you may only use a couple times a year. You have to access something like paying your life insurance policy or something along those lines. That's difficult. There are companies out there that put in password tracking software. You can look into them, look for highly rated ones, and that's a possibility where that can help simplify the process for you.
But it might be as simple as writing them down all in one place, yes, and keeping that written list in a safe place. And you may have to access it every day, but that's part of that's the inconvenience of having the convenience of online access to so many things in your life.
Exactly right. And the thing is, don't leave that on your computer with the name password.
Yes. So Mike, do people ever need to change their social security number? I mean, today most people have had their social security number for most of their life. And in the experience of the police department, do people sometimes need to change it?
Yeah, it's not a recommendation we make that you should change or attempt to change, because it's not your choice. Obviously you have to reach out and to the Social Security Administration. Yeah, that's one data point that the thieves use to try to acquire your identity. But again, you can put fraud alerts on different accounts that will counter the issue with the Social Security number being known to somebody.
Mike, tell us what is the Internet Crime Complaint Center? In our first segment, you talked about going to the Federal Trade Commission website to record the information if you're a victim of ID theft or cybercrime. Is this something similar?
It is, and it's where it aggregates information about internet-related crime, and again, is part of that federal level where we're trying to fight this issue, which is, as many of us know, is really an international issue. People are susceptible to cybercrime regardless of where you live, and regardless of age. So these are things that everybody has to be concerned with. And it's important just not to sit back, be a victim of, and assume your credit card company or bank are going to take care of everything. Take that next step and just go online and file those reports.
And go online and periodically, maybe as frequently as monthly, go and change the password for the real important online accounts, your financial accounts and bill paying accounts. If you have online access, change those passwords. Is that a good recommendation?
You should, and in many cases you'll be prompted to do so. We work here in Lower Merion municipality. We're prompted to change our passwords to get into our network. Many companies do the same thing. And as far as consumers go, in many cases you'll get reminders. It is time to change your password for your bank account or for a credit card.
Don't ignore those reminders, because it does make a difference.
It does.
And a complicated password that you have to write down somewhere is the way to go.
It is the way to go. It's a combination typically of numbers, symbols, uppercase, lowercase, so that it's not easy for a hacker to get into people's accounts.
Mike, we're out of time. Thank you. I think this has been very helpful. It's such an important issue that is affecting everybody in our community and beyond.
Absolutely it is. And we'll have, with this program, post some information, some tips on how to prevent being a victim of identity theft and cybercrime.
And victims can always contact the Lower Merion Police Department.
Absolutely.
I'm Commissioner Scott Zelov, and along with Lower Merion Police Superintendent Mike McGrath, we've been talking about identity theft and cybercrime, and a big issue and a growing issue that affects so many people. We all probably know someone who has been a victim. This is LMPD, Partners with You. Thanks for watching.